Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, exploring the issues affecting all of our lives. I'm your host, Austin Harris. On March 8th, the world, including the Cayman Islands, recognized International Women's Day, with the focal point being to recognize and celebrate the women's rights movement, gender equality, and violence and abuse against women. This year's theme is Embrace Equity, Women Driving Digital Innovation and Technological Advancement. With us in studios, it is our pleasure to welcome an organization that has been at the forefront of the fight against inequality and a promoter of diversity here at home since 2012 and globally since 2001. Please join us in welcoming to our program for the first time, partner at the Maples Group and board member of 100 Women in Finance, Miss Christina Bodden. Ms. Christina, thank you so very much for agreeing to be our guest here on Let's Talk.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure and happy Women's Day.
Oh, well, thank you. And happy International Women's Day to everyone in the Cayman Islands, to everybody in the world.
Indeed. Tell us a little bit as we begin about first yourself and then the organization known as 100 Women in Finance.
Sure. So I am a partner at the Maples Group. I'm actually a partner in the Investment Funds Group. And it's funny, I've told this story so many times over the last couple of weeks because I think it's an interesting story and people want to hear it. You know, I started at Maples many years ago, and you and I have been friends a long time. I think you'll remember me in law school, the Cayman Islands Law School, pulling all-nighters on scholarship at Maples, and I worked incredibly hard and kind of worked my way up and became partner, and it's been a fantastic journey for me, and I've been very appreciative of the opportunities that I've had there. And it's funny, what I always reflect on around this time of year, around International Women's Day, is, you know, I did it while being a mom. Yeah. And I did it with the incredible support of my family, my grandparents, you know, and I couldn't have done it without them. And I often think about things that, you know, it takes a village. And I am certainly a product of that. Yeah. And I try very much in my own career, in my own life, to give that back and to support as many other women as I can. And so this is a very special day for me. Yes. For 100 Women in Finance, that is also an organization that does outstanding work around the world. It promotes gender equity in not only finance, and we say finance, but really its reach is just so much greater. It's about empowering women in the workplace. Now, here in the Cayman Islands, I think its work has had such a demonstrable impact in terms of what Girlforce 100, which is our career mentoring program that we run in the local high schools, has done in terms of helping young women to kind of get their thoughts together in terms of, what do I want to do with my life? Where is my career going? Can I have a career? Mm-hmm. You know, and that is a huge question to ask a 15, 16-year-old girl who has never thought these things before. Mm-hmm. You know, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I don't know, but I know I like math. I know I like to write essays. I know that I like this. Or maybe I don't know anything about what I like. And just planting a seed in her mind, you're good at this. How about doing something in that? And starting to make those goals take shape. 100 Women in Finance has been incredible in Cayman for helping develop a huge group of young women to think about their careers in the next stage and giving them the platform to do that. I think another thing that 100 Women in Finance has done incredibly well is helping women in industry build networks, because I think networks are incredibly important to all of us. Mm-hmm. Peer-to-peer engagement, I think, has been fantastic. You know, because when you're in the workforce, and in any job that you're in, and I think these principles apply to both men and women. Sure. It's great to have other people that, you know, you can bounce ideas off of, or say, hey, I'm dealing with this. You know, have you ever dealt with this? And how did you deal with it? It's fantastic to have peers. Peers are so important, and that's why clubs, associations of any kind are very, very valuable. And one of the things that 100 Women in Finance has done is bring a collective of people together for a common purpose here. And that has been incredibly impactful, not only for the impact work that we've done, the charitable gives that we've made in Cayman over the years, and then when we switched our focus back in 2019 to investing in the next generation and really focused on Girlforce. then I think our impact was just absolutely explosive. And we've got, committees of incredibly hardworking volunteers who do this just because they believe in our mission. And our mission is called 30 by 40, and it's trying to bring a generation of young women into the industry. And I say industry very loosely because it's just into careers in finance. And I say finance very loosely, by the year 20 by 40 into C-suite roles. And that's just, management roles, basically. We want these young women to aim higher, and that's what it's about.
Outstanding. Well, maybe you can tell us in your own words how you feel 100 Women in Finance came in, what impact the organization has had on women in the workplace since it was first established in 2012.
So when I look back and I think about what we have, and I don't think, and I said this on a panel actually last week when Kim and I was just so thrilled to welcome the Earl and the Countess of Wessex, and we did a panel. It was so thrilling to have them here. I just feel it just kind of lifted everybody up a little bit. They're just so wonderful, I think.
Aren't they just?
I don't think 100 Women in Finance actually gets the credit that it deserves in Cayman for creating a dialogue back in 2012 that wasn't really present before. In any organization, you have to have balance. And balance is a word that is as much on my mind these days as it is, as any other word is, whether it's equity, whether it's anything else. And I think that 100 Women in Finance, when it launched back in 2012, and it was myself, it was Odette Sampson at Deloitte, it was Joe Cunningham with me at Maples, it was Nadia Hardy, it was Nicholas Stradling at Maples. We just knew about this organization that did really cool events in London and New York and different places around the world. And 100 Women in Finance has grown exponentially globally since then. I think we've got 32 locations in the Middle East and Europe and Asia and the Americas, and it's a massive organization.
Taken off.
Really has. And I think that we created language here that people started using where employers started thinking, we need to hire more women. We need to find ways to retain them so that they don't quit after they, have babies and then they can't come back because the structure doesn't fit for them.
Right.
We started making companies think better about equity and equality and, how it makes sense to have a diversity of people around the table when you're making key ideas, because people have different perspectives and those perspectives can often lead to better ideas.
Absolutely.
And I think that 100 Women in Finance probably doesn't get the credit it deserves for just creating that dialogue. Yes, DEI is so crucially important to what we do, but 100 Women in Finance, I feel, was one of the first organizations to really drive it home. The first organization to drive it home, it was the Business and Professional Women's Club. And the reason why that means so much to me is because one of the founders was the Honorable Sybil McLaughlin. Right? And then that work was taken forward by fantastic Andrea Williams, Joanna Bodden-Small, and they've done such a fantastic job. They were truly, I think, the first. But 100 Women in Finance went out with an absolute bang. And between those two organizations, really, really, I think, brought that to the forefront. And that's been great.
Excellent. Sounds like it's been a very exciting time, to say the least. Tell us a little bit about 100 Women in Finance investing in their next generation initiatives.
So, you get to a point in an organization, right? And 2001, it was really a group of women, and this might seem a little far removed from Cayman, but 100 Women in Finance as an organization was started by 3 women who were working in industry. And industry back then, you're coming out of the 90s, right? It was a very, very different place. That was industry. You're working on Wall Street. And their experience led them to want to have an organization where women had a voice. Because back then, that's a very different time. Women really didn't have a voice. And so they wanted to have an organization where they felt a collectiveness and a kinship and a peership with other women who were in the industry. And I have so much respect for them. It was Sarah Dyer, Dana Hall, and Carol Kim, who are actually still involved in the organization. They're incredibly wise. Their counsel is so fantastic. I'm so glad that they're still involved in the organization, because it takes bravery and foresight to start something new that wasn't there before.
Right.
And I think that, you know, what has then been built from that, I think, has been incredibly, it's been an evolution from time to time, because the world changes, things change. And I think in terms of the impact that we have had, what we found in 2018 was things can stagnate if you don't look previously to what's coming down the pipeline. And one of the things that we were missing was we had a huge organization of very senior women. Very senior women are very senior.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't look to the generation behind you,
Quite
like
right.
think of the statute that's in front of the courthouse, right?
Yes.
That statute says everything, right? It should say it to men and it should say it to women. You have to look behind you, because behind you is the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we weren't capturing was that younger demographic. And that younger demographic kind of didn't really understand finance.
Right.
They didn't understand what a job in finance was. They didn't understand what a career in finance could look like. And so what we did, and I don't remember if you remember when I did this, but we did the first next gen
Mm-hmm.
like demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And what that was young women. They were like in their 20s, maybe late 20s, early 30s,
Yeah.
who were having their first jobs
Mm-hmm.
in finance. They were working for accounting firms or law firms or marketing firms, or, you know, working in different places. And they came together, and that was fantastically successful.
I think I just had the opportunity of speaking at one of those
You
events
spoke
in another
several
life.
times, right?
Yes, it was a wonderful, effort, and certainly the gathering of young minds was just terrific.
And the energy is great.
Yes.
And I mean, like, you know, they're all taking selfies, and it's
Yeah.
like all on social media, and you know, it was fantastic because they were so excited.
Right.
And they were so excited to have it. And what we realized is, if as an organization we want to reach that goal
Mm-hmm.
of 20 by 40, they are the people that are going to be reaching that goal.
Correct.
You know what I mean? When you're a senior person, you're kind of thinking about, well, you know, what can I accomplish left in my career? By 20 by 40, it's them that will be sitting in those C-suites. And in fact, reaching back even farther, that's where girlforce 100 comes in, because we're taking those girls out of high school
Right.
and saying, let's work with you to shape what your career can look like, right? It's those girls that we want to put into a career of whatever kind. You know, you don't have to go into finance. You can do anything you want. But it's not an if I will do something with my life. It is what I will do.
Indeed.
And so what we started doing is, in terms of our fundraising and our charitable gives, what we would do is choose, based on a set of rotating pillars, what type of organization we would give to, whether it was healthcare, whether it was women and family health. And we started focusing all of our efforts on fundraising for investing in the next generation. So we choose grantees that are aligned with our goals, which are bringing young women into viable careers in finance. And that's worked really, really well for us since 2019.
Indeed. I want to focus on something you said, creating something that wasn't there before, but also looking to the future. You've got to look behind you. Mm-hmm. And that is the girlforce 100 initiative. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about this initiative specifically, and also what milestones do you believe have been achieved since girlforce initiative was introduced, I think, in 2015.
Yep, that's right. I think a lot about girlforce and what made it work so well. And I think, first of all, the collective committee that runs that program, right? We get support from 100 Women in Finance headquarters in New York, and they're a fantastic support. Mm-hmm. But that program is run by a committee of volunteers from various firms. And it is unbelievable to me. First of all, 100 Women in Finance locations all over the world are manned by volunteers. And I think that in and of itself is just so fantastic, right? But girlforce is very, very special because it is a youth mentoring program. Now, it's not a whole child mentoring program. It's a career mentoring program, right? But It is run by a group of volunteers. It's chaired by Jackie Terry. You know Jackie very well from Butterfield, and Kelly Sage, who's with Ramp Consulting. But there's some very important people in that committee. You've got Lara Diesel from KPMG. You've got, Florence Jones is our, Florence. Yes. Florence Jones is our administrative assistant. You've got Heather Turner from Circumference Legal. You've got Anna Brown, who's now with Conyers. These are people who are just so intricately invested in what we do. And what we realized, and there's been different iterations of the committee, but back in 2015, I wanted to do a community outreach piece to Next Gen, right? And we sat down with then Education Minister Tara Rivers, and I wanted to do a mentoring program. And she was really on board with the idea. And so myself and Renee Corderon, who's now at SEMA, and you might remember this, we sat down with a group of teachers from John Gray. John Gray have been so fantastic with this program. And to be honest, John Clark is such an excellent principal for that school. He's so innovative, so forward-thinking. We sat down with them. We sat down with Clifton Hunter at the time, just those two schools. And we sat for weeks and just did incubator sessions in terms of what are the issues that you are facing with young women in the school, in the student body. What are you seeing? We just did brainstorming session after brainstorming session. And the threads that kept coming back were confidence, self-esteem, self-image. I remember a teacher once told me, this is the only school I've ever taught at. And I've taught in some tough schools. Like this, he was from England, and he was just like, I've just taught in some tough schools and some tough boroughs. Yeah. This is the only school I've ever taught at where these kids have no dreams. Right. Like, it's not even like I want to be not an astronaut or a pilot, or I want to be a rock star. I want to be, like, even if it's something outlandish, there's graduation and then there's a drop. Right. And I've never seen that before as a teacher, and that made me so sad. So at the end of all of that, we realized this program has to focus on empowerment of these young women. So it's not about what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because I know most adults couldn't answer that question, right? I don't even know if I could answer that question. It's about, these are some options that you could potentially look at. Tell us about yourself, young woman. What do you like? Well, I don't know what I like. I like math, but I don't really think about it, but I think I'm kind of good at it. Right. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, right? And let's, over the course of time, show you what the opportunities are out there that can match with the things that you like to do. And that basic formula has been so powerful to help build confidence in these girls, to show them their strengths match with something out here, to show them that their value means something, and to get them to be better, to want to be better, because we can always be better, right? Yes. And whenever we do the application cycles for girlforce, I absolutely love the answers that we get back from the girls, because I know grown adults that wouldn't say things like that. Like, why do you want to be a part of this program? I want to be a better friend. I'd like to get better grades. I'd like to have a better relationship with my teachers. I'd like to be more help around the house. I'd like to figure out what my career could be. Some people say, I saw one the other day, I'd like to be a construction worker. And I was just like, and then I called her. I was like, why do you want to be a construction worker? Because they make a lot of money, Miss Christina. She's right. And I was just like, you are straight up right. Yeah. And we get all of these things. But to hear the girls say something as simple as, I'd like to be a better friend. Yes. That's what that's saying to me is, I want to learn how to communicate better. Yeah. And to be honest, that's really brave. Sure it is. And so that's really the magic of this program. And that's why these girls are now being placed in scholarships. They're now being placed in internships. They're now being, put forward for jobs that they wouldn't necessarily have ever applied for, because they found bravery and they found confidence in which to do it. Indeed. Speaking of empowering women and looking back at Cayman's history, there have been some terrific role models for young women to follow. You mentioned one of them earlier on, and that is the Honorable Sybil McLaughlin, the first Speaker of the then Legislative Assembly.
what have been some of your role models, but also more importantly, how do you use role modeling in the Girl Force 100 initiative?
Role modeling is the secret sauce for how this works.
Okay.
And it's not just, first of all, I don't think that any of us, I think Sybil McLaughlin is such a powerful role model for so many women in Cayman. I mean, how can you beat that?
Mm-hmm.
How can you beat somebody, first female clerk of the LA, first speaker of the Legislative Assembly in 1991, national hero in 1997, and you're doing all of that while you're a wife, you're a mother, you have all of those other things going on. I mean, anytime anybody tells me, I can't do everything, I always think, well, Sybil did.
Yeah,
so,
quite right.
Like I say it in my mind, I don't really say it, but the fact of the matter is that she was absolutely an outstanding role model for so many people. Role modeling is the secret sauce of Girl Force, and that's the thing that you can't replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did was we started pairing the girls with the members of Next Gen. Because if you're too senior, you're kind of not seeing so much eye to eye. If you're just a little bit older, well, then you're almost like a big sister.
Right.
You know what I mean? And those slightly older girls in Next Gen are already in the industry. They're already working jobs. They're either in junior positions or mid-level positions. They kind of have the time to spend with the girls, and it's incredibly powerful.
Right.
It's kind of like what Michelle Obama says, you have to see it to be it.
Sure.
And that's very, very true. It has to materialize in front of you. And the role modeling works several different ways, right? The girls are paired with a mentor that they meet once a week, once every other week. They can call up, they can say, hey, I'm having an issue, or this, or what do you think? And that has worked beautifully. But the other thing that I really, really believed in, and that I think has been very powerful, was for a very long time, Girl Force was in John Gray and in Clifton Hunter. We had a fantastic experience there. But what I learned about young girls, because I'm the mother of 2 boys, is no matter where you go to school, no matter where your background is, if you're a 15, 16, 17, 14-year-old girl, the issues are probably the same that you're experiencing it. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of years ago, we opened Girl Force to an application from any girl, from any high school. And when we looked at a room with girls from Cayman Prep, St. Ignatius, CIS, John Gray, Clifton Hunter, and they're all sitting around together, they're all talking about the same music. Mm-hmm. They're all talking about the same things that they're dealing with. They're all talking about social media. They're all talking about body image. They're all talking about all of these things. And I realized, right, when you bring people together, especially young people, they're all going to find a common ground. Mm-hmm. They're going to build new friendships. It almost kind of breaks things down and brings everybody as to one group. That's been incredibly powerful at Girl Force, and I really stand behind, kind of bringing all the girls together. And I like some of the friendships that have been made there. One of the things that we've done in Girl Force that I think has been incredibly powerful is we have an outstanding teacher that's on our board. She's at John Gray, which is Karita Levermore Stewart. And she runs a teacher's roundtable. And teachers from all of our participating schools, I think St. Ignatius participates, John Gray, Clifton Hunter, I think Cayman Prep, they all meet, I think once every 2 months, and they just get together and they talk about, well, what are you seeing? How are things going for you? Are you seeing any issues? And talk about potential challenges. And it's a nice forum to brainstorm things and say, well, how do you deal with this when it comes up? And how do you deal with that? It's nice because guess what that is? It's peer-to-peer. Yes. Exactly what we have in 100 Women in Finance. Mm-hmm. And I think that they really enjoy that. Mm-hmm. And, it might be over a coffee or something. But, teachers like peer-to-peer too, mm-hmm. especially when you're dealing with a group of students. And so the role modeling works, whether it's the mentee and mentor, whether it's girl to girl, because some of our girls are incredibly high achievers. Incredibly. And some of our girls, they struggle a little bit. It's great to be best friends with somebody who's knocking it out of the park and going, hey, would you mind studying with me a little bit? I'd really like some help in math. And she goes, yeah, sure. Why don't you come over and we can study together? That is very powerful.
Indeed. We just talked about role modeling as being the secret sauce, but I would dare say that you have come up with the secret recipe to develop what is a successful organization. Let's go back to International Women's Day for a moment and the theme for this year, embracing equity. What does that mean to you? But more importantly, what does that mean to Cayman's local companies, and how are they implementing it into the workplace culture?
Yeah. You know, embrace equity. And we just did a fantastic event at Maples, and a very good friend of mine, I actually met her at her book launch. She's an author. Her name is Helen Goodyear, and she's a gender diversity specialist. She wrote a book called Coaching Women to Lead. And we invited her to come and speak to our workforce yesterday. It was a great event. One of our new partners, Carrie Ann Phillips, moderated it, and it was fantastic to see Carrie up there taking the reins of that and doing that. And embrace equity is that equality and equity in the workplace isn't something that is nice to have. You could have it. It's optional. You have to have it, and it has to be integral in the DNA of your corporate culture. You know, I sat on a panel recently, and we talked about things that were integral to a post-COVID workplace, right? We talked about hybrid working, we talked about remote working, we talked about all of these things. And one of the things that was a real focus for the panelists, and I thought this was incredibly interesting, was good leadership and strong corporate culture, right? People want to belong to something worth belonging to. That is incredibly important to people, especially as you disconnect them, right? And being an equitable place to work where we know that opportunities are available for everyone is increasingly important. It's never been more important. I have to feel like I have the same opportunities at a workplace that anybody else does.
Right.
And what Embrace Equity is telling us is it's no longer just a topic to talk about. It's for companies to implement. And they have to do that by policies. They have to ensure that they have, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in place. And I have to feel as an employee, whilst a lot is expected of me as an employee, right? You have to be on time. You have to do a good job. You have to make sure that your work is of an excellent quality. What you should expect from a company is that you feel that you're included. You feel that you have the same opportunities as anyone else. That's what that means.
Indeed. Well, Christina, I'm certain I'm not going to be the first, and I'm also not going to be the last. But allow me this moment to congratulate you and the leaders of 100 Women in Finance for what clearly is and has been a tremendous, if not excellent job in empowering young women and women in general across the Cayman Islands and the world. I think you certainly have what it takes and the right recipe, and I think it's a tremendous job. I also want to congratulate you in advance for what sounds like to me ideas that have yet to make an impression, but are certainly in the planning stages. Very quickly, as we wrap up, for those women, whether they be young or not so young, listening to today's program and wanting to get involved, whether it be through 100 Women in Finance or whether it be part of the Next Generation initiatives, how can they be a part of this fantastic organization?
So there's so many email addresses, I can never remember them all. So the website is 100women.org.
Yes.
And I can't complete without, giving a fantastic shout out to our amazing CEO, Amanda Pullinger. Her vision is woven into all of what 100 Women in Finance does. So you can go to our website, 100womeninfinance.org. If you have any questions about 100 Women in Finance Cayman Local, please reach out to Florence. It's FLORENCE at 100, and it's 100women.org. And she can answer all of your questions or point you in the right direction.
All right. Well, again, Christina, thank you so very much for agreeing to be our guest here on Let's Talk, and to your organization for the tremendous, if not inspiring work that it is doing in the local community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And to our audiences, we again say thank you for taking the time to tune in, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode as much as we have. If you did, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please feel free to leave any comments you may have on either the Progressives YouTube channel or our Facebook page. Please tune in every Sunday at 2 p.m. for another episode of Let's Talk, exploring the issues affecting all of our lives. I'm your host, Austin Harris. Until next time.